Chapter 186 to 188. Year 766, May 12th. The day that Trunks had prophesied had finally arrived. Our heroes, after almost 3 years of training, research, plagiarism and development. And also after some filler chapters in which Piccolo and Goku got their driving license. Krillin tried to get a girlfriend, but failed sadly. As usual, Marin in my heart was always real, despite being a silly version of Bulma. Mutant Rashi tried to sleep with Ginger, but she was preventing him and Itsundra away with the argument that this would only happen when he beat her in a fight. According to her, the defeat of a few years ago doesn't count. Yam finally forgave Vegeta's alternative infidelity, more or less. At least she no longer had psychotic attacks. And last but not least, where Gohan started bringing money at home before his father. All of them flew on an island located 9 kilometers southwest of Metro South. And along the way some of them began to meet their old friends. Krillin-san. Mutant Rashi-san. Ginger-san. Gohan yelled upon seeing his group of friends. Look how big you're getting, Gohan. Krillin and Mutant Rashi said, greeting Gohan, who unlike his father grew at a normal rate. And after that meeting, Goku, Piccolo, and all the others greeted each other according to the usual regulations in shonens. However, Goku was struck by the expression of his friends. What's the matter? After all this time, aren't you excited to see us? We're just about to wage the fight of our lives against horrible monsters. How can you expect us to be cheery? We aren't a Super Saiyan, you know, said Mutant Rashi and Krillin, who were obviously somewhat concerned and knew that in this conflict they could contribute very little. But unlike them, Ginger was quite enthusiastic about it. Yes, you aren't. Hee hee. Ginger said, trying to hide her smile, as if she were a little boy trying to hide a secret. While talking about what they had done these 3 years, the 6 arrived at the meeting point. And after tracking the nearby keys, they found the rest of the group, who were waiting for them on a nearby mountain from where the city could be seen. There were Ten Shinhan, Yamcha and Bulma. We've been waiting for you. You guys are a little late. Now the only missing ones are Yam, Vegeta and... Yamcha said with joy to see his friends after so long, although his last sentence was no longer expressed with such joy. Yes, it took a while. By the way, where is Broly? Piccolo asked, worrying about the absence of the Deus Ex Machina with tail and third eye. Broly. I guess you will have to ask Bulma, said Ten Shinhan, who had already asked before. And once the eyes of Goku, Gohan, Ginger, Krillin, and Mutant Rashi were on Bulma, they were puzzled to see her after almost 3 years. Hey, why are you staring at me? Ah, I know. You can't believe how pretty I am, right? Bulma said haughtily, showing off her eternal youth and the new hairstyle of this week. Well, it's impossible to say no, but... Sh. Ginger, don't pinch my arm. The truth is that it is impressive that you are still so young when you are in your 30s. But we imagined that by now you would have a little Trunks in your arms right now. Or at least an equivalent son or daughter of Broly. Some of the newcomers answered to Bulma. Let's see if you know who each line belongs to. Why did everyone think that would be what would happen? Very simply, they believed that Broly in his ultra-competitive and jealous eagerness would want to impregnate Bulma as soon as possible to completely avoid the already unlikely birth of Trunks. And with it mark his territory again. But, why hadn't it been like that? You're crazy. We know that on this day there would be a new apocalypse. This is not the time to take care of a child when I have to take care of you, said Bulma, who during these years reconsidered and realized that this wasn't the best time for that she could wait for the prophesied day to pass. Something that discouraged Broly a lot, as he wanted to do exactly what the Z Warriors had thought he would want to do. Okay, makes sense. But what about Broly? Why isn't he here with you? Piccolo asked again. Unlike the others, he worried about what was important before an android invasion. Having a good team. Broly. I think you better see and hear for yourselves where he is, said Bulma while projecting a hologram of Broly from her latest generation watch created by Capsule Corp, on sale soon. Hello friends, my dear Bulma, Yamcha and Vegeta. If you are seeing this hologram, it is because I had to leave due to a great setback and I still haven't been able to return. One of my contacts has warned me that in Universe 9 a special and extremely rare life form called yourself has been doing some pretty bad and disturbing things. A life form capable of perfectly imitating a person he has ever seen, his appearance, his memories and his powers, although they can only do it once in their life. And it turns out that yourself copied me one day when I went to Universe 9 to buy tobacco. Even though I don't smoke, don't ask why I did it. In short, there is someone just like me and with my same powers out there, but surely not as good or responsible as me. So I have to go to stop him before all the universes are in danger. Or what is worse, my reputation as an exemplary citizen. I'm sorry I can't help you with the androids, but I have to face myself. And I can't underestimate myself. Good luck, said the hologram Broly as he said goodbye to those who were watching him. And in this way the broadcast was cut off, and obviously this message didn't leave anyone indifferent. Another guy like Broly? This is terrible. Krillin said, who changed his fear priority. The android apocalypse no longer seemed so worrisome. This is serious. Goku, Mutant Rashi and Ginger asked with almost as much fear as Krillin. This is a joke. Right, Bulma? Gohan and Piccolo asked, who after so many years of living with Broly felt that this was perhaps a fairly well-posed excuse to sneak away. I can't tell you if it's true or not. Or if I prefer it to be true or not. But it seems that this time we will have to solve this problem without him, said Bulma somewhat annoyed as she turned off the hologram. After that episode that created more questions than answers, the group tried to kill time before the androids arrived, explaining what they had been doing these years and other conversations without much relevance or importance. Hey Mutant Rashi-sama, how are things going with Ginger? Some progress? Hehe, you know what I mean, Yamcha asked with a perverted face as he elbowed his half-teacher in a suggestive manner. I'm afraid it's not quite right. She don't let me, you know what I mean. Mutant Rashi said very discouraged as he watched Ginger, who stood next to Piccolo and tend to look at the city in search of those supposed androids. And on the other hand, Dad, take the medicine, Gohan said handing him one of the pills that Trunks brought from the future for his future heart disease. Hey. Why? If I'm fine, Goku protested, since he had a pathological fear of injections and medicine in general. Papa, we know very well that you will suffer a heart attack around this time since you couldn't fight the androids. So before you have a heart attack, you better start taking your medication. That's why I've been telling you to take one a day this whole week, Gohan said once more, almost putting the pill in his father's mouth, who seemed to refuse to take the medicine as if he were a small child or a pet. But it tastes awful. And it's hard to swallow. Goku said as he tried to get his face away from the pill. Dad. It's your health. Take it at once. Don't protest. Shouted Gohan, who transformed into true Saiyan and immobilized his father to force him to take the pill while the rest of the cast laughed at that comical situation. Until a flying vehicle approached their position. It was Yajirobe, who had come to deliver a few senzu beans. Here. I'm dropping off these senzu Karen-sama sent Yas. My hero. You can always count on Karen-sama. Despite everything Broly says, Goku said happily taking the big sack that Yajirobe was handing him. Well, best of luck to Yas. I ain't like the rest of you idiots, I don't wanna die, Yajirobe said in a cowardly but intelligent way, distancing himself from danger while others fought for him. And as Yajirobe fled with his tail between his legs, our brave and foolish warriors began to grow impatient, since the hour that Trunks announced had come and there was no trace of any modified human. You don't suppose what he told us isn't true, do you? I mean, we're not sensing any strong ki. If they're really that strong, we should be able to sense them anywhere on Earth, Yamcha said, that as always, he was a jinx. Boom. What happened? Everyone screamed at the same time they heard an explosion near there. And what exploded was Yajirobe's spacecraft in flight, which crashed into the sea. Look! There's someone there. They attacked him. Piccolo said pointing to some mysterious humanoid silhouettes, which were close enough to see where they were and how many there were but also far enough not to recognize the physical characteristics of those assailants. Assailants who with great speed descended towards the city. And seeing what had happened puzzled our Z warriors for several reasons. And one of them was, how can it be? I didn't sense any ki at all. Goku said, puzzled by not feeling the ki of his enemies. It was as if they didn't exist, and this was something very bad for them, since both to track and to fight they used their ki detection. But what worried the whole group the most was, that isn't the most important. Did you see it right? There were 7 people. I couldn't see their appearance, but they were definitely 7 and not 2 as Trunks had said, Gohan said very concerned about this change in history. If only 2 androids had been able to destroy Trunks' future, what could the presence of 5 more androids mean? 7 androids stronger than Trunks, who had a power similar to Goku and had no ki. Everything had become very complicated and confusing. They had too many questions and the answers would surely not be pleasant. And what was worse, they had no one to ask. Or so they believed. Yes, Dr. Gero's androids have no key. They use another type of energy to replace it, and the reason why there are 7 and not 2 is because this timeline has been quite modified by the presence of Broly and Trunks. And obviously these changes have caused certain alterations in future events, such as the increase in androids. But this I warned you that ending the problem before it started was the best solution. But you never listened to me, said Bulma, quickly answering their questions and reminding her friends that her warning from years ago. Warning that she remembered at every annual barbecue that Broly organized. Obviously that Bulma knew all that intrigued our Z warriors, who were more or less satisfied with the answers. Bulma, how do you know all this? Unlike certain idiots who only think about enjoying fights, I have taken the future of the planet seriously. That is why I have done my homework and I have investigated our enemies, said Bulma, answering their questions as she took a capsule out of her pocket and threw it on the ground. Palm. From that capsule a huge container appeared, to which Bulma approached and pressed a button that protruded on the surface. Inside were several trackers similar to the ones that Frieza and his lackeys used. Bulma. What is all this? Goku asked, who couldn't intuit the usefulness of these trackers. It is not obvious. They are trackers that I have prepared exclusively to detect androids. These devices don't detect the key, but they do detect the different types of energy that the different types of androids that Gero has created. If you don't know how they work and you don't want to waste time consulting the manual, ask Ginger, she can teach you how to use them as you search them, said Bulma, handing Ginger a tracker bag. But the moment she was about to hand over the trackers to her friends, something surprised and disturbed her. Eh? What happened? Why do you look at me like that? Everyone was staring at her with their mouths wide open, in awe for witnessing this astonishing level of preparation and knowledge about their enemy. Preparation and knowledge of the enemy that raised countless questions and concerns. So many that they didn't know how to react. Do you want my trackers or not? Said Bulma, insisting again as she delivered the briefcase, this time forcibly placing it in Ginger and Gohan's hands. Yes, it would be better to have that thing than to look for them blindly. Although I am not going to use one of those gadgets similar to the ones Frieza, Vegeta, and the others used. Let's go quickly to the city before something bad happens, Piccolo said, accepting Bulma's gift on behalf of all the Z warriors. Piccolo's message had been very clear, even to the most idiotic. They had no time to ask questions or decline this help, they must leave as soon as possible and find those androids in the shortest possible time. If you don't mind, I'll go look for Yajirobe, Gohan said, who separated 1% of his power, creating in this way a clone that would go looking for his fat, rude, and cowardly, more or less friend. Okay. Bulma, keep the senzu bean for us, Goku said, passing the responsibility of saving their second lives to someone who wouldn't participate in the conflict, as happened in the original show. Why the hell are you giving them to me? The ones who are going to fight are you. In the event that you are seriously injured or need to recover energy, the most logical thing is that you have them well distributed, Bulma said, handing the bag back to Goku in an attempt to make others use the common sense. You're right. Yamcha, do you keep them? Goku asked, throwing the bag at Yamcha, who accepted that responsibility. Also, you don't need to give me senzu beans. Last year I went to Karen's tower to get hundreds of them to do some experiments. I had brought a few in case you had forgotten, Bulma said, to show who's the brain of the team again. Wow, you've thought of everything, said Goku, amazed by the foresight of his first friend and traveling companion. Guys, stop wasting time. Those 7 androids are inside the city, said Ginger, who had time to put on the tracker, show Gohan and Krillin how to use it and locate the androids. Okay. Let's go for them. Goku said, announcing the start of that expedition. And in this way our warriors descended towards the city in searching that known but at the same time unknown enemy. Desire Realm. In the Broly planet, in the Broly city, in the Broly mansion. All of Broly's henchmen observed in real time the events carried out by the true protagonists of the original story. 7 androids? What the hell happened? There were only supposed to be 2-inch those who watched the Android Saga weeks before in Crunchyroll. Meroman doesn't make money from this publicity, but I am open to negotiations, exclaimed. Yes, 7. Don't you know the concept of the butterfly effect? Broly asked his reviewers rhetorically. Yes, but this change is too big, Kamagawa, a strong defender of the official contents of the Shonen Jump, protested. Don't be picky. Didn't Trunks/Cella's arrival on this timeline change things? In the future of Trunks, C-20 and C-19 never appeared, they were C-17 and C-18, and C-16 wasn't there too. Butterfly effect. Although well, technically that wasn't a butterfly effect. Akira Toriyama wanted the androids C-20 and C-19 to be the evil androids of the future of Trunks, but his editor didn't agree that an old man and a fat man were the bad guys of the saga. That's why later they created C-17 and C-18, a boy and a pretty girl. But then the editor didn't like that either and they invented Cell, the typical evil monster of each saga. The fact is that my presence has changed many things. I warned you not to get bored, said Broly, explaining a little of the hidden history of Dragon Ball and also about the current, present and future. You mean you already know what will happen? Yawatch asked, who despite being able to see the future couldn't see that far into the future, like Katakuri. Obviously, but I'm not going to do spoilers. Just enjoy the movie, said Broly as he materialized his classic movie pack. In the center of a very normal city on a very normal day, a group of 8 quite abnormal people descended flying in a very abnormal way towards a group of 7 people who weren't very normal either. A group of 7 people made up of 1. An emaciated old man with a rather ridiculous hat, Jero/C-20. 2. An extremely pale fat man, C-19, who mysteriously looks like Kim Jong-un, with a very ridiculous hat. 3. A tall, slim man with sunglasses, dressed in a rather elegant suit but with a strange and very ridiculous afro hairstyle, Android C-21. Yes, the C-21 of the video game don't exist here, the movie of the C-13 either. 4. A short, middle-aged woman, not very pretty, dressed like an office worker and wearing a rather ridiculous metal beret, C-22. 5. A huge, muscular man with a mentally unbalanced face, dressed as a Mad Max character and wearing a World War II helmet, C-23. 6. A rather short, thin boy with an idiot face, dressed like a sports suit and wearing a ridiculous metallic baseball cap, C-24. 7. A fairly attractive young woman, with good proportions, dressed in a long white coat that covered her entire body and with a ridiculous white Soviet hat on her head, C-25. There, said Ginger, who pointed with her finger at the 7 presumed guilty people of being modified humans, and she didn't seem to be wrong, since it was the most picturesque group that was nearby and they were 7. And in the same way these presumed modified humans also pointed to the presumed Z warriors. So they are the abnormally high energy level humans that were poaching, said C-22 in a robotic way. My data agrees with the appearance and power of these subjects. They are Son Goku and his companions, said C-19 while his eyes flickered, something that indicated that he was using his internal computer to search for information. Are you the artificial humans? About time you showed your faces, said Piccolo, who has always talked excessively in front of the new enemies. And obviously that free information created some concern among the androids. Strange. How did you know we were artificial humans? What's more, you seem to know we would be appearing here on this island. Why don't you tell me how you knew? Said Dr. Gero, asking very coherent questions given the circumstances. Follow us and you will know, said Gohan, who intelligently indicated to all his companions that they should get away from there as soon as possible without negotiating with them a change of location to avoid collateral damage. Some of them were killer androids that had wiped out millions of life in Trunks' future. It wasn't wise to ask them for something like that, since it was very likely that they would do the opposite. So, without further ado, neither Goku, Piccolo, Ginger, and the other filler Z warriors followed Gohan, who was flying away from the island. What do we do, C-20? Do we follow them or do we collect energy from these inferior humans? C-25 asked Dr. Gero, who didn't know what to prioritize. The initial strategy of getting stronger by devouring thousands of weak humans or going after Goku and the others. I think it would be better to follow them. Killing Goku is our main objective, the reason why we were created, said C-21, which was very loyal to his programming. I don't like the idea. Wouldn't going after them be equivalent to doing what they want? C-22 said, showing some reluctance to chase them. Come on, C-22, absorbing their energy will be more efficient than that of all the humans on this island, said C-24, being quite consistent in his approach. Besides, they can't beat us, said C-19, with great confidence in his abilities and those of his mechanical brothers. Very well. We will follow them. We let them choose the place where they die. When we arrive, use the combat pattern H-14-inch, Dr. Gero said, as it was programmed into the brains of those energy-absorbing androids, they should always obey his orders. So they activated their anti-gravity devices and followed Goku and the others, who hadn't strayed too far from the island, to make sure that the 7 robots were following them. It seems that they follow us without major problem. Good job Gohan, Piccolo said, very glad that Gohan's improvised plan achieved the expected result. It was nothing, Gohan replied humbly as he tried not to blush. By the way Gohan, how about Yajirobe? Did you put him safe? Krillin asked, worrying about those weaker than him. Obviously Gohan replied quickly, yes, I already left him where Bulma was. Now my 1% clone is in hiding, watching those 7 to see what they plan to do. They seem to have some way of locating our energy just like Frieza's trackers and have started to fly to follow us. Answer that more or less reassured everyone. The 7 assassin monsters were leaving the city without causing any ruckus. Great. However, that tranquility disappeared in an instant when he saw Gohan's face, who suddenly yelled, OHNO. Boom! Ha ha ha. Do you want us to go somewhere else? I think now there is no problem fighting here now, see, 23 said, laughing like a psychopath. Damn bastards. Gohan and Goku yelled upon see what had happened. Just when the 7 androids had taken flight, C-23 turned towards the city and launched an energy sphere at it. A sphere of energy that completely destroyed the island on which the city is situated, vaporizing all the people living there. And among them was the 1% clone of Gohan, who was able to see live how the island disintegrated. Island where 2 of his friends were still. Oh no! Bulma! Yajirobe! Everyone shouted with great anguish and desolation as they considered the possibility that their 2 friends, especially Bulma, had died in that explosion. Anguish that turned into extreme fury, especially for Goku and Gohan, who would have instantly attacked the androids. If it wasn't because... Don't worry, Yajirobe and I are fine, although Yajirobe is a bit upset. What the hell was that? Said Bulma, who was communicating through the trackers she had given them as Yajirobe yelled near her. Bulma? Are you really okay? How did you survive that? Gohan asked, very relieved and puzzled at the same time. That attack had disintegrated his 1% clone, a clone that was initially stronger than the poorly trained Bulma. What the hell was happening? And Bulma once again answered to reassure her worried and bewildered friends, yes, I'm fine, don't worry about me or Yajirobe, I'll tell you what happened later, and instantly the reassuring message turned into an extremely loud and annoying lecture, but get those monsters away from here. Or from any other inhabited place. And for the record, I warned you. I warned. I told you there would be collateral victims and you didn't want to listen to me. How many thousands of people have died because of your stupid selfishness? If you had followed my plan, none of this would have happened. But of course, you always have to do what you want. And blah 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 blah. Lecture that obviously began to annoy our heroes, who couldn't stand Bulma's piercing screams one more second. Ginger, how do you turn the volume down on this thing? Yamcha asked, who more than anyone was against receiving another lecture from Bulma. And while they wondered how Bulma and Yajirobe had survived, the androids approached them. So Goku and company, suppressing their desire to fight right now to avenge those thousands of deaths, they decided to find another place to fight. Yamcha-san, give me a senzu bean please, Gohan said as they flew to nowhere. Why Gohan? What's happening to you? You are injured? Yamcha asked, who didn't understand why Gohan asked to eat one of those now. Yes and no. The technique of the multiplication of bodies that Broly taught me allows me to divide up to 100, each of those parts with a certain power. In this case, the clone they just destroyed was 1% of my power. In the event that one of the clones is killed, I will automatically receive the damage and lose the part of power that that clone had received in that percentage. So by being disintegrated I have lost part of my energy and I have also received damage, Gohan said, explaining the inconveniences of this version of the Kage Bunshin. I see, it's not a perfect technique then, Krillin said, who didn't know all the details of this miraculous ability that only Gohan, Bulma and Broly used. In the middle of the exodus, while Gohan recovered from his injuries, Goku and the others intelligently tried to find a completely uninhabited and flat place, without mountains, rocks, trees or anything else that would serve those androids to hide. But Gero wasn't stupid and he realized the intentions of his enemies, in not Son Goku. How far were you thinking of going? Right here is fine. I'm making this the spot. You have no claim over us to choose the location. The 7 descended vertically towards the island below them and the Z warriors this time were forced to follow them, contrary to what had happened a few minutes ago. A tableland, but surrounded on all sides by rocks. If it becomes necessary, they figure they can flight us while hiding among the rocks. These guys have thought this out, Piccolo thought as he landed, checking that this location isn't favorable for them. Before we kill you. How is it possible that you know so much about us? I think we have been very careful all these years not to leave any traces or create any suspicions. How did you know that we were modified humans and that we would appear this day in that city? Jero asked, showing that he was in command of those 6 other androids. And seeing that C-20 and the rest believed themselves far superior to them and looked at them arrogantly. Piccolo tried to extract information from them at the same time that he told them how they knew about them with the strategy of his half-teacher Broly, mixing the truth with the lie. We have many magical and unconventional ways to know about you. We have become quite wary of possible threats after the invasion of Vegeta and the others, and then Frieza. Although we didn't expect that, the next threat wouldn't come from space, but from planet Earth itself, Red Ribbon. Although it is curious, we believed that you would only be 2 androids and not 7-inch. Well thought, Piccolo. Everyone thought as they witnessed the incredible psychological move of our favorite babysitter. I see, they aren't going to confess how they knew about us. C-25 said, disappointed to see that she would be unable to satisfy her artificial curiosity. Interesting. You thought that only 2 androids would appear today. This means that your prediction method is unreliable or that you haven't updated it, said Jero, who began to theorize based on what they were explaining. What do you mean? Asked Ginger, who didn't like riddles. Sending only 2 androids was Dr. Jero's initial plan. However, almost some years ago he detected a level of power that his most accurate detectors of that time were unable to calculate. And apparently that same source of energy collaterally also destroyed the miniature grub-like spy robots that kept us informed of the situation, power and weaknesses of Goku and all his friends. Said Dr. Jero, that like every evil genius he loved to explain his evil plans. That had to be when Broly defeated Frieza and his father. Or when he found out that Trunks was Bulma's son. Or when someone asked for a salad in his first barbecue. His incredible ki may have destroyed those spy robots, thought those with good memory and agile mind. That source of power puzzled Dr. Jero, who determined that Goku wouldn't have large increases in power. So he used those spy robots to watch over Broly, the only person for whom we didn't have precise data and that unfortunately we have never had even today. Broly, who is also the first suspect of destroying the spy robots and of having that high combat pow, and that later also destroyed the other spy robots by accident. Every time. Jero continued recounting, who loved to hear the sound of his own voice. Although he was unable to hide how much the existence of Broly bothered him. This guy suspects well. And I'm afraid that all the changes in the story are due to Broly, everyone thought at the same time for more than obvious reasons. The fear that Broly had a power far superior to what was believed and the fact that due to that energy explosion another of Dr. Jero's spy robots, who was in charge of another project, was also destroyed. Forced Dr. Jero to allocate all his resources in the creation of androids that would be able to face that unknown threat and Goku. And that's why we are 7-inch, said Dr. Jero, who continued to recite his monologue of genius of evil with certain material difficulties. Yes, there is no doubt, it is all Broly's fault, everyone thought all at once one more time, dispelling any doubt about who should they blame for the changes in the story. Dr. Jero was a bit anxious about the unknown Broly data, but after an estimate of his maximum capabilities and a simulation of different scenarios the computer determined that the probability of our defeat was less than 5%. Also, from what I can see today, Broly is not among you. This turns our probability of defeat to 0%. Resign yourselves to die, said Dr. Jero ending his monologue. I see. So did you guys spy on me during the fight on the planet Namek as well? Goku asked seriously, a Goku who was hyperventilating and sweating a lot, as if he had trouble breathing. Most likely they couldn't. If they were there and they had seen how Broly moved an entire planet, the percentage of defeat wouldn't be so low, Piccolo thought, still trembling in fear due to that galactic feat. There was no need. After your fight with Vegeta we had a complete knowledge of your strengths and abilities. Of Karuz, should you become more powerful still, taking into account your age, it was calculated that there could be no more tremendous increases in your power. There was a chance that you could use your son's ape transformation or even the enigmatic Kin, but none of that would put you on our level. Our only concern was still Broly, on which we focused almost all our efforts, Dr. Jero answered, explaining why he committed an unnecessary irresponsibility. The irresponsibility of underestimating his mortal enemy by not collecting all the possible information during his training. Although this time it wasn't 100% his fault, almost all efforts were focused on Broly, who was destroying his budget on spy drones. It looks as though you failed to investigate the most important thing about me. You guys lose. Goku said confidently, despite the fact that a few seconds before he was hyperventilating. "K?" yelled Dr. Gero in a rather unnecessary way. "It will cost you lives not to have known about the Super Saiyan," Ginger said, who took a step forward, standing next to Goku to also have prominence. "Besides underestimating me too. If you determined that I wouldn't improve, it means that your machines don't work correctly or that whoever programmed them was an idiot," Piccolo said, who threw down his training cap and cape. "I think the same," Gohan said, distancing himself from the humans to side with the alien team. "Super Saiyan?" said at the same time several androids, which didn't know about this alien concept. But at that moment, Goku made the demonstration about the Super Saiyan. Surprising friends and foes. What an incredible key. Can his power really be this great? Ten Shinhan said, representing all the humans on that island, who will once again feel aggrieved by the difference between them. You certainly have achieved quite an increase in power. However, it is still not enough to overpower us, said Dr. Gero, that didn't want to recognize that he hadn't done a good data collection. You three stay out of this. It would appear I'm the one they want the most, after all, said Goku, who wanted to finish once and for all what he started when he was a child, in addition to taking all the fun for himself. Don't even dream about it, Goku. Come on, there are too many, I want to play with one of them too, Ginger said, showing her typical rowdy nature of a pure-blood Saiyan. Same here, Goku, it's better that we keep them entertained in case they decide to do something weird. You are their top priority after all. Who knows what they are capable of in order to kill you, Piccolo said, worrying about his best friend and the father of his adopted son. Dad, I have trained hard for 3 years with you. Everything for this moment. You can't tell me not to do anything, said Gohan, who was glaring at the androids with hatred as he transformed into true Saiyan. I see. This will be a group match, said C-24, who expected to have an individual match against Goku, as if this were a tournament. C-20, despite having verified that our data wasn't entirely correct, determined that we must follow the previously combat pattern? Asked C-21, who seemed to be quite farsighted. For their reaction it will be better not be overconfident. Use the combat pattern Z-69-inch, Dr. Gero ordered after listening the advice of his war machines. The maximum efficiency pattern. All the androids except for C-20 said at the same time. The war was about to break out. Goku watched his enemies, waiting to see who would be the first to volunteer to play with him. Piccolo was carefully observing the movements of C-20, the one who looked like the leader. Gohan was trying to work out a strategy in his mind, even though he didn't know what he was up against exactly. The humans tried to pretend not to be scared to death and that they have some reason to be here. As for Ginger, she was preparing for war in the most showy way possible, hee. You better look at me with wide eyes. Goku is not the only Super Saiyan. Transforming into a Super Saiyan. Something that greatly surprised Rashi, Krillin, Yamcha and Ten, but not Goku, Gohan, Piccolo. Incredible. This ki is as immense as Goku and Trunks. Now I have more confidence that we can win. Damn, these Saiyans are on another level, the four Earthlings thought at the same time, sharing their thoughts in a very synchronized way, anime magic. Although one of them, Imagine Who, had some additional thoughts. Wow. My brunette Ginger is beautiful. But my blonde Ginger with green eyes is also gorgeous. I don't know which one I prefer, classic brunette or blonde dilemma. Hee. Ginger, since when can you do it? Mutant Rashi asked after getting rid of his perverted thoughts. I have been training for years with a Super Saiyan, the strange thing would be that at this point I couldn't become one. Also, I wanted it to be a surprise, said Ginger with great pride and satisfaction when she saw the surprised faces of the crowd, who didn't stop looking at her with their mouths wide open. She loves to be the center of attention. I see. Gohan, can you also transform into a Super Saiyan? Krillin asked, who no longer cared if everyone became stronger than him. He wanted everyone to become Super Saiyan and finish them off soon, before more unexpected events could happen. No, for some reason it hasn't been possible. But don't worry, with my Kin, my true Saiyan and Kaioken, I am much stronger than a Super Saiyan. Don't worry, Gohan said, who understood Krillin's concerns and wanted to reassure him. However, it wasn't a very smart move on his part. I see, thanks for that valuable information, said Dr. Gero, who made some gestures with his hand. And at that very moment, a great flash completely blinded our warriors. It was as if from their eyes those androids recreated the solar flare of Ten Shinhan, but thousands of times more powerful. Ah! My eyes! Screamed all our blinded heroes at the same time as they rubbed their eyes. Everyone lost their vision. After losing their main sense, some tried to locate their enemies with their key detection until they regained their vision. It was a reflex action that they activated despite knowing that this method wouldn't work against androids that had no key, so they couldn't use this method to orient themselves in the dark. Although luckily or unfortunately that method gave them some very bad information. What the hell is happening with the ki of Goku, Ginger, Piccolo, Gohan, and Yamcha? It's decreasing enormously every second. This is not normal. Thought Mutant Rashi, who by not wearing his characteristic sunglasses couldn't avoid that blinding attack. Something strange was happening, and the only one, among the protagonists, who knew for sure what was happening was Gohan. Gohan, even though he rarely did, this time he used Ien, creating a circle of aura around him, a circle of aura in which he could feel the shape and movement of everything around him. Thanks that skill he realized that two androids had immobilized him and that in some strange way they were absorbing his ki very quickly. And worst of all, he was unable to move properly or use his ki as he would like. And the exact same thing was happening to Goku, Piccolo, Ginger and Yamcha, who were being immobilized and sucked by those leech androids. Damn! They had everything well planned. They have left us completely blind and are leaving us without energy. And surely they are getting stronger with the stolen energy. They have gone for the strongest from the beginning, and for Yamcha also with this objective. Damn! I was too overconfident. Gohan thought as he tried to get rid of that huge android and the small android that were devouring his energy. When analyzing the situation, Gohan took a quick plan of action. The first step was obviously to break free of that immobilization that had drained much of his energy. What happened? Gohan's energy has decreased too much in a very short time. Huh? Another Gohan? The two androids that were immobilizing Gohan thought, who quickly realized that something strange had happened. The Gohan they were parasitizing had lost a great deal of energy, and instead another Gohan had emerged from him with all the energy they considered lost. It was obvious what had happened. Gohan had used the body multiplication technique Broly taught him, separating 99% of his power and remaining energy, sacrificing the other 1%, which was still being drained by the two androids, who took a few tens of seconds to realize the distraction of Ninja. At that moment Gohan activated his Kaioken X20. Adding the multiplier of the true Saiyan and the Kaioken, Gohan had achieved a pseudo-transformation with a multiplier of X200. A multiplier that doubled the power of Super Saiyan 2 that Gohan achieved in this saga in the official version. Adding to that the incredible power of the Kin, Gohan in theory achieved the power of a Super Saiyan 3. But unfortunately for Gohan, those two androids, as if they were African mosquitoes, drained more than half of their energy in a short time. Energy that served to enhance that enormous power. Energy that was in great discrepancy with the maximum power he could achieve. A Super Saiyan had a power multiplier of X50, but at the same time also energy reserves equivalent to that multiplier, but that wasn't the case with Gohan, who only had an energy multiplier of X10 to support a power multiplier of X400. And worst of all, a lot of that energy had been drained. I have to act fast or it will be too late, Gohan thought, who was aware that for both him and his friends the situation was disastrous. Gohan, knowing that he had little time left before he ran out of energy and that he needed to rescue his friends and family quickly before they died drained and the enemies grew stronger. He made a dangerous and difficult decision. Divide his body even more in order to free his companions, who were spread out in different directions. For that he divided his body into three. One with 25% of his abilities remaining was sent to help Piccolo, who was on his left. Another with 25% of his remaining abilities was sent to help Goku and Ginger, who were on his right. And finally another with 49% of his remaining abilities was sent to help Yamcha and the others before they were killed or taken as hostages. Why did he use his 50% of his power to rescue useless humans? Because very close to there were the other two androids that were sucking his 1% clone, because one android already had Yamcha as a hostage and because another one was near the others. Gohan needed to be prepared in the event that he had to face 3 or 4 of those leeches while rescuing and ensuring the safety of useless characters. Foo! The two Gohan against all odds managed to locate with great precision the two androids that they were immobilizing and draining 2 of their father figures, and he kicked them in the face, throwing them away from there. Pam! Piccolo! Help me with Yamcha and the others. Gohan said, worrying about Piccolo's condition. Dad! Help me with Ginger, Gohan said as he ran at full speed to free Ginger, who was still being drained by her android. However, they weren't very helpful. When everyone regained their vision due to a flash of light, they realized that everything was black, as if they were in a totally dark room without windows. Piccolo immediately realized what was happening. These bastards, they have created an extremely dense smoke screen. They have known how to use all their advantages and our disadvantages to face us. They are very crafty. My only alternative is to follow Gohan's ki and sharpen my hearing. On the other hand, the Gohan 1% had been completely destroyed almost instantly and the androids had realized what had happened, so they switched targets. Top priority: take Mutant Rashi and Krillin as hostage. None of them can be resurrected by the Dragon Ball again, said one of the androids with a very specific objective. Damn! Shouted the Gohan 49%, which was chasing C-25, the android that was draining Yamcha, which upon realizing that Gohan was heading towards him began to fly in circles while using the almost dead Yamcha as a human shield. Therefore, upon hearing his dark intentions, Gohan had no choice but to divide his body 49% in two again, leaving 15% to go after Yamcha and 34% to prevent them from capturing Krillin and Mutant Rashi. Gohan could only pray for Piccolo and his body 25% would arrive as soon as possible to join him. However, C-25 detected that Piccolo and another Gohan were rapidly approaching her, or it. There are artificial androids, a Gohan that decided to use all his power to increase his speed and reach her. So when Gohan got close enough to her, close enough to hit her on the head despite holding Yamcha. Chaff! C-25 pierced Yamcha's stomach with his hand and with that same hand she shot at Gohan 15% with an energy beam. Fuyuum. Boom. Energy beam that took him completely by surprise and hurt him badly. Wounded enough to knock him half out of action and for C-25 himself to take him as a hostage. Hostage whom he could continue to parasitize until death. Damn! Shouted Gohan 25% upon see that inside that smoke screen things were going from bad to worse at the same time he charged against C-25. Ha ha ha. Stupid kid, you're going to fall into the same trap twice, thought C-25, who put the palm of her hand on the back of Gohan 15% to repeat the same strategy as before once Gohan 25% was close to her. What she didn't expect was that the Gohan 15% would separate again by 1% and 14%, sacrificing again a 1% of his body. What? C-25 yelled upon verifying that her plan had failed. Plash. However, that distraction was fatal, and thanks to it Gohan 25% pierced his own body 1% to destroy C-25. Super punch. Boom. They had finally defeated one of those monsters. At that moment Ginger was released from C-22's grip by the other Gohan 25%, who went to the rescue the other Gohan 25%, who was now fighting C-23 and C-24, who managed to absorb his energy by resorting to very dirty plays. Goku continued to fight C-19 blindly, although the fight wasn't going very well for him, but thanks to the training he had received as a child dogging lightnings he was more or less able to follow his undetectable enemy. Ginger immediately returned to fight against C-22 with the help of her tracker, seeking revenge, and this made C-20 suspect, who didn't understand how Ginger was able to locate C-22 with such precision. Piccolo, who had followed a Gohan, again faced C-21, who had followed him. In addition, Gohan 14% very injured and about to die, combined with Gohan 25% to not waste all the energy of this body, despite the fact that this implies sharing the damage received until now. The Senzu Bean I must take one to regain my 39% power and my injuries. And also save Yamcha, Gohan thought 39%, who barely advanced towards Yamcha, who was still alive but was very weak. Gohan needed to take the sack of Senzu Bean that Yamcha was carrying and use them to recover. But... boom! The body of C-25, which was lying next to Yamcha suddenly exploded. Exploded vaporizing Yamcha, the Senzu Bean he carried with him and also the badly wounded and without energy Gohan 39%. That explosion was so powerful that even the dense smoke screen that covered the entire island was completely dissipated. Did you think we would let you regain energy so easily? Why did you think C-25 prioritized attacking Yamcha? It's because we knew he was carrying the Senzu Beans, said Dr. Gero as he took his hand out of his pocket with a cruel and arrogant smile on his wrinkled face. Wrinkled face that everyone was able to see, except Yamcha, thanks to the dissipation of the smoke screen. A dissipation that helped our warriors to orient themselves and thus be able to fight against their mechanical opponents. But also to be distracted. Yamcha. The humans screamed, seeing that their useless friend had perished. Father! Gohan 20% and 35% yelled upon seeing that his father was losing. Something wasn't right with him. It was like he was weaker than usual. For that reason Gohan 25% who went to help his 35% changed his objective and returned to help Goku. For that reason Gohan 25% who went to help his 35% changed his objective and returned to help Goku. However, Gohan! Yelled Piccolo, seeing that Gohan 35% was in serious trouble. Due to the lack of energy, that he couldn't always have the Kaioken activated, the fact that C-23 and C-24 were playing dirty trying to attack Krillin, Mutant Rashi, and Ten Shinhan and seeing their father lose. Gohan lost focus on his main threat. I have you. Now C-24-inch C-23 yelled, which grabbed Gohan and absorbed his energy again. Not in dreams, yelled Gohan, who released a large amount of energy in his back, creating an explosion that destroyed the entire trunk of C-23. With this Gohan had destroyed his second android despite all the adversities he had gone through. However C-24 in a coordinated way and despite paying the price of losing a hand. Slash. Cut off Gohan's tail. That caused him to lose his true Saiyan transformation, dividing his power by 10 and also his energy. Bomb. Gohan. Hold on. Shouted Piccolo that after a hard battle he also managed to destroy C-21, thus leaving 4 androids available. Piccolo without hesitation for a second went to help Gohan 35%, who had lost his tail and with it his great combat potential. He was in danger and before him was another android. Bomb. An android that killed him. And oh Gohan. Piccolo yelled upon seeing what they had done to his disciple. Piccolo quickly turned to the 20% Gohan, the last one left and the one who went to help Goku. However, something happened to him halfway. Suddenly his body was filled with wounds, he seemed seriously fatigued and had even lost his tail, thus ending his transformation. It was as if that Gohan had suddenly received all the damage that the other Gohans had suffered. However, something was clear, Gohan the strongest of all of them had lost his ability to fight, and on top of that C-24 was after him. Gohan, I'm coming. Piccolo yelled as he charged towards C-24 to protect Gohan, who had become totally defenseless against a one-armed C-24. On the other hand, Ginger continued to fight C-22, which managed to absorb a lot of his energy at the beginning, leaving Ginge dry due to, among other things, that she wasn't making very good decisions. Death of a fucking leech once. Ginger yelled as she joined her hands to perform a powerful energy attack on C-22, which she had managed to corner. Golden Death. Ginger launched a giant energy sphere at her enemy who she believed was totally unprotected against her final attack. However, surprising everyone. Glung. Glung. Glun. C-22 devoured that attack with his hands. What? Could they absorb energy like that too? Ginger yelled in surprise and frustration upon realizing that she had missed her best chance of winning. And a lot of energy too. Yes, and now I will devour all the energy you have left. Ha ha ha. Said C-22, which charged towards Ginger and began to drain her one more time. And Goku was even worse than Ginger, Gohan, and Piccolo. My heart. Damn. Why right now? Goku thought as he clutched his chest, which ached as if someone were sticking thousands of burning needles into him. And C-19 obviously took advantage of that moment of weakness to beat him up and drain his energy in the same way that C-22 was draining Ginger. Goku. Ginger-chan. The 3 remaining humans shouted and stepped forward to help, unconsciously forgetting that they were a hindrance. You cannot proct 1 centimeter further than this. If you are not idiots, you should enjoy every second of your miserable and insignificant lives. Seconds in which you can see how Goku will perish, before you can follow him to the other world along with Yamcha. Ha 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 ha. Said Dr. Gero, who came between Krillin, Ten Shinhan and Mutant Rashi, who were paralyzed by fear. They were aware that they couldn't do anything against them, moreover, their death could be a distraction for Piccolo and Gohan, who hadn't yet fallen prey to those energy-devouring androids. But, at this rate, Sun and Ginger will be, said the useless ones as they looked helplessly as their best friend, former rival, friend, student and supposed couple were about to die. When suddenly, Pam! Pam! I'll be the one to kill Kakarot. You flea market mannequins have no place in this, Vegeta said after making a last-minute triumphant and unexpected entrance, kicking C-19's face and saving Goku from certain death. Take your metallic hands off my sister. Ginger, no matter how many years pass and how strong you become, I always have to save your ass, Ginger said after making a last-minute triumphant and unexpected entrance, kicking C-22's face and saving Ginger from certain death. K. Vegeta and Yam, shouted Dr. Gero upon see that new enemies appeared. Desire Realm. In the Broly planet, in the Broly city, in the Broly mansion. Broly and his acolytes continued to watch the live broadcast of Dragon Ball Z. Why is Yamcha always the first to die? Asked Obito, who was beginning to feel some pity for him. Pure coincidence, Broly replied as he moved his eyes from one side to the other in a very suspicious way. Wow. If they hadn't been so arrogant, things would have been very different, said Ichiryu, who analyzed the fight with a bit of interest. As always, they are confident idiots who think that others are going to play by their rules. Although it must be recognized that these androids have been quite efficient. They have come up with a good plan to defeat them, regardless of the opponent's battle power. That Gero really got ready to deal with you, Broly. I would have liked to have such practical slaves to kill the Joestar family, said Dio, praising another villain with loyal and not so loyal subordinates. You had them, Dio, but you made the classic mistake of sending them one by one to kill a team of protagonists. If you had sent almost all of them at the same time with a good plan instead of fucking with Pucci and prostitutes to have at least 4 sons, you would have won, Broly answered with an incontestable logic. Anyway. Thanks to my student, they have survived for now. I have taught him well, too bad he didn't react in time. If they hadn't stolen his energy at the beginning, he could have killed them by himself without the need to divide. Although surely he would have had to divide equally to defend those hindrances. If it weren't for them, they would have already won. It seems that due to my changes, the killer androids are unscrupulous and use whatever means necessary to achieve the best results. Anyway. Vegeta and Yam will take center stage now that the others are in poor condition. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.